Thank you for joining. Attendees will be in listen-only mode. If you have a question, you may submit them in the chat or Q&A panel. We will address them after the presentation. When you type a question, please address to all panelists. At this time, I'm handing it over to Lee.
All right, thank you, Ray. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing well. We've got an exciting webinar today. First of all, you know how we talk about making the customer experience our point of difference. That is how we will win, and it's vital that we all play a part in this. We go the extra mile. We're focused on service, building that trust, and building those long-standing relationships, because that's what will keep people coming back. And as we've said before, when we talk about a great customer experience, it's not just how we treat our customers externally, it's how we treat each other internally as well, with respect. Because if we're doing that, it will permeate externally and we will all benefit. As Ray mentioned, if you've got questions, enter them in the chat, and Gayleen will ask them as we get towards the end of the hour. But I'm very, very pleased to introduce Danny Snow. Danny was born into a true Disney family. He and every member of his immediate family worked for Walt Disney World at some point in their careers, learning what it takes to create a loyalty-driving customer experience. After he earned his MBA in business, Danny was the director of marketing for Snow and Associates, where he helped grow the family business from a startup into one of the top customer service speaking training companies in the world. His role has brought him into contact with leaders of organizations around the globe, assisting them in making decisions that impact their company's futures. As a speaker, Danny helps organizations achieve their goals related to customer service, employee development, and leadership. So it's great to introduce Danny. And Danny, I'll hand it over to you. We're looking forward to what you have to say.
Well, Lee, I appreciate that. Thank you for having me here to talk two of my favorite things, customer service and Walt Disney World. And so to get started here, I am always curious to find out if you could just put in the chat there, how many times have you been out to one of the Disney parks before? If you've never been, if it's been once or twice or 5 times or more, would just love to see real quick. I know we got a lot of people, so they're going to come flying through here. But so far it looks like we are getting a couple times what have not been there, but the majority at least have been out there once or more. So I gotta say, I do appreciate you all very much. I am a stockholder, so if you wouldn't mind going back again, that would be fantastic. And so I'm born and raised here in Orlando, and everybody in my family did work out at the parks at one point or another throughout their career. And it started off with my parents. Both my parents, they actually met working out at Disney, spent 20 years out there, starting off on the attractions and then working their way up into management. And so for me as a kid growing up here, I was very fortunate. I got to spend a lot of time out there in the parks. Anytime there would just be a day off from school, or my parents needed something to do with us for the day, they would sign me and my little brother David or me and a friend into the park, and that was just kind of our playground for the day. And I'll tell you, this is not something I ever thought about back when I was a child, but as I got older, got into the business world and would reflect back over my childhood, I really couldn't have asked for a better opportunity at such a young age to see up close and experience what a truly world-class, service-driven organization is supposed to look like and feel like from the perspective of a customer, while at the same time allowing me the opportunity to go out there behind the scenes, get a chance to see what goes on back there, and really start to learn what it takes to deliver the kind of service that Disney is so well known for, every single day. And so I always knew when I got older, and I was hooked. I was drinking the Disney Kool-Aid. I knew that I wanted to follow my parents' footsteps. I wanted to work out at Disney World too. And very first job that I ever had, I was working out at the Magic Kingdom. I was working on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And I worked as a gold miner. And I will tell you, my parents, they were so proud of me because they paid me to go to college, and then that's what I did. And I didn't work out there for a very long time. But I can tell you that the training that you received at Disney, the experience of working out there in the parks, I mean, that has always stayed with me. And it has really served me well in a lot of the different positions that I've held over the years in hospitality and in retail. And I love getting to do what I do now. And we work with organizations around the world that they want to raise the bar of service. Yeah, they really want to get better at what they're doing. And I will start off today just making a quick disclaimer. I will use a lot of Disney examples, right? 'Cause that's what I know. That's what I grew up with. But I would certainly never tell you that Disney does it perfectly every time. Because believe me, I know firsthand that they don't. Yeah, they screw it up just like everybody else does out there. But they do have a single objective in mind. All right, when you leave Disney World at the end of your vacation, now they want you to have one thought in mind, which is when can we come back? And think about it, that's if you have no money left. All right, but you can't wait to come back. And so, really, everything along the way is designed to make that happen. And ultimately, what it comes down to is it's about loyalty. It is about building a sense of loyalty with the people that you serve. And obviously, I recognize that you work in the mortgage world, a very different industry than Disney. But that objective of the loyalty, now that is very much the same. All right, like you, Disney World, they want to attract new customers, right? They want new guests coming out to the park. They want to keep the ones they have coming back time and time again. Plus, they want those guests out there in the world telling everybody, in person and on social media, what a great experience they're having out at Disney World. Right? The same thing is true for you. You want to attract new customers, new borrowers coming in, right? You want them coming back time and time again to you. And then you want them telling their friends and family when they're ready for a mortgage too, that they've got to come and see you. Right? So again, I recognize that the industry is different, but the objective of the loyalty, that's really what I want to focus in on here today. And so, it looked like a lot of you had been to one of the Disney parks before. And I'm going to ask you to just do one more thing in the chat for me here before we get started. But for those of you that have been out there, I want you to think back to your time out there, wherever your favorite place there was. Those Epcot, Magic Kingdom, Disneyland, wherever you were. And you're walking around. And here's my question for you. Just put your answers into the chat there. But what were some of the things that really impressed you about Disney? All right, what were some of the things that really stood out to you? Can I see there? Clean, the atmosphere, haunted mansion, the cost friendly, very clean, friendly attention to detail, lots of family. Actually felt like magic, clean. Seeing a lot of good answers here. Happiest place on earth. Has lots to do. Well-oiled machine. Well, no, the smell. Well, those are some great answers there, and there were some really weird ones too. All right, no, I appreciate that. Those are fantastic answers. All right, but I want you to all really think about this now. All right, from a business perspective here. All right, I was asking you, what impressed you about Disney? And we got a lot that came through, a lot of different answers, and really only one or two did I see in there say anything about the rides. And folks, the rides now, those are really kind of the point. All right. I mean, you go to Disney World, you can't wait to go on Space Mountain. You can't wait to go on the new Guardians of the Galaxy ride or Avatar or Tron or, like this ride here, the Tower of Terror. And I don't know how many of you have been on this one here before, but this is a very cool ride. This has always been one of my favorites out there. Oh, Ashley too. And out in Disneyland, they turned this into the Guardians of the Galaxy, but back home here in Orlando, this is still the Tower of Terror. And what it is, for those of you that have not been on it before, is it's a haunted hotel theme where you go inside, you sit in these little special seats in this elevator, and it will take you up 13 stories up to the top. And when you get up there to the top, the elevator starts to shake, and it feels like it's breaking. And, why people love to do these kinds of things, I really have no idea. But it's a 13-story free fall where you will literally come out of your seats on the way down. And now these seats are Scotch guarded, okay? Because for those of you that have been on it before, you don't want to go on it right after you have breakfast. All right? But then when you get down to the bottom, the ride, it will zip you back up and drop you again. Now, get ready for this, okay? Because that one ride, now that cost Disney $100 million to build. And that was in 1994. Thinking about it today, we've got the new Guardians of the Galaxy that they built here at Epcot. That one ride cost $500 million. All right, but think about this. And we will ask people all the time, what impressed you about Disney? And without fail, people say it was clean. The people were friendly. From a design perspective, now that is very frustrating. All right, you mean to tell me I'm going to spend $500 million on one ride for you, and the best thing you can say about the park is it was clean? People were nice? That's very frustrating. But from a business perspective, I think it is very important because Disney knows that they are not selling rides. Disney knows that they are selling the experience, which is not to say that the rides don't have to be great, because they do. Rides have to be great. But Disney figured out a long time ago that they're not going to be able to compete on rides all by themselves because rides are commodities. There are so many options out there in the world for thrill rides. And it's not even that they just compete with places like Universal Studios, Busch Gardens, SeaWorld. I mean, they're competing with really anywhere you can go on vacation. And it doesn't really matter where you are these days. You are typically not that far away from some sort of thrill ride or amusement park. But there is a reason that time after time, year after year, Disney World will rank as one of the top tourist destinations in the entire world. And it is because from the moment you start to plan your vacation until the moment you leave at the end to go back home, everything in between there, now that's the product, because that's the experience. And folks, the same thing is true in your world. Your customers have so many choices in where they can go to get a mortgage, right? And a lot of times, with everything going on right now with different rates or things, it involves maybe not getting one at all, just continuing to rent or doing something else besides getting one. So, well, obviously the services that you offer, have to be great. Your pricing and everything has to be fairly competitive, even if it's more expensive. But that's every single person watching here, every single vendor that you work with, everybody across the entire process plays a huge part in delivering that experience. And that experience is ultimately what is going to set you apart in what is a very competitive marketplace. And so to me, that's really the key in today's business world. And it's really going to serve as the overall theme to everything that I want to talk about today, is that in everything that, every single thing that we do, all right, every single interaction that we have with the people that we serve, that we are doing it within experience mentality versus a task mentality. And my guess is that by hearing those words that you likely know exactly what I'm talking about. Because you can go into any place of business out there. And I don't care if it's a restaurant or a store. And you can tell when the employees there, they're focused in on completing the tasks, right? They might be completing those tasks very efficiently, but they are focused in on completing the tasks. And here's the thing, when we do what we do as a task, our customer tends to feel very processed. And it is very hard to feel any sense of loyalty when you feel processed. Versus going into a place of business where the employees are still completing the tasks. All right, obviously there are things going on that we need to take care of. But they're focused in on creating a positive experience. And now if I'm your customer, now I really feel valued. And to me, I think wherever our customers fall, kind of on that continuum there between feeling processed and feeling valued, that's ultimately going to be their loyalty factor. All right, and so there are 3 things that I think we can do really in any organization to bridge that gap between feeling processed and feeling valued. And keep in mind today, as I'm talking about these principles, that these will also apply to the internal service as well. All right, and so the first principle that I want to talk about here today that I think is really at the heart of any service-driven organization is this idea right here. Is to look at everything through the lens of the customer. All right, that is look at every single thing that you do through the lens of whoever it is you're serving. And here's why I think this is important. Most organizations do not. Now, they will say that they do. They'll say they look through the lens of their customers, but they don't. And you have experienced this all the time. Like if you ever have purchased furniture or a large appliance that you had to have delivered to your house, and they tell you to wait at your house between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. for that delivery truck to show up. Yeah, whose convenience are they actually concerned with? It's not yours. All right, or if you're sitting on hold for 45 minutes hearing that recording going on and on about how much they value your call, right? Do you really believe them? But I'll guarantee you, if you go to their website, if you look in their marketing materials, now they will say we are a customer focused organization, but you experience the processes they put you through. And I can tell you that it all comes down to those processes that we're putting our people through. And so often they're not. And so to me, that's really the question we need to always be asking ourselves is, whose lens are we looking through when we make the different decisions that we make here? And I will tell you, when you do start to understand the lens of your customers, everything changes. All right, you start to understand and recognize why they sometimes might say some of the strange things they say, or do some of the strange things they do, or why you might sometimes get some strange questions. All right, because I know everybody here watching it, at some point or another, you have gotten a question from a customer where you are just wondering, what in the world is wrong with you? What is going on in your mind right now? Like some of my favorites. I used to work at Disney World, and I mentioned I worked on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. All right, so we were gold miners from the 1800s. Yeah, that was our theme out there. So I'd be standing out front of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad in my gold miner's outfit on. I had this cowboy hat on, and really I looked like Woody from Toy Story. All right, every single day, guests would come up and ask me, "Do you work here?" And at this point, I was a grown man at this time. All right, so I would just say no. Yeah, this was just in my closet next to my Batman costume. I figured I'd wear this out today. And the all-time great Disney question that you get out there in the parks a lot more often than you would expect is, guests would literally come up and ask you, what time is the 3 o'clock parade? Now, how do you answer that question without making somebody feel stupid for asking it? But when you understand the lens, you understand what they're really asking. There's usually a question behind the question that they're trying to get to. So we were trained, for example, to know if a guest were to come up and ask us, what time is the 3 o'clock parade? What they really want to know is, what time is the parade going to get right here, where I am? Because that parade route now, it's a 1.5 miles long. So it wouldn't get to some parts along the route until 3:30. So it was a legitimate question, but only if you're seeing it through their lens. Or how about if I'm standing out front of Big Thunder Mountain and a guest comes up and asks me, do you work here? Now, what they really want to know is, can you help me? All right, so again, it's a legitimate question. Maybe they ask it in a funny way, but you've got to be seeing it through their lens to really see that legitimacy. And thinking about what you do too, and especially when it comes to a new home buyer doing this for the first time, looking at all that money that they're about to commit to for 30 years of their life, you can start to understand why you might sometimes get some of these strange questions. And so you've really got to find a way to turn this lens around and see it through their lens. And I've got a way that I want to share with you that you can do this. I've got a few tools that I'm going to share with you here today. I really just want to introduce them. Afterwards, Galen is going to be sending these out to everybody. So if you can use it and customize it to what you do there, that'd be fantastic. I hope that you find it to be helpful. But today I really just want to introduce them to you. And so the first tool that's up here is something that we call customer experience mapping, like any process mapping. And the way that this works is, you identify a process that you want to get better at in terms of your overall customer experience. All right, now, obviously, you know your processes a whole lot better than I do. All right, but this could be anything from an online application or coming into one of the branches to do an application. It's day of closing, handling somebody that's getting cold feet towards the end, whatever it is. And then you gather a group of the right team members that would be involved in this particular process, and you map it out step by step. So obviously each box up here represents a step in that process. All right, but here's the key. Now, each step needs to be through the lens of the customer. All right, not the lens of Flagstar Bank, not the lens of your department. All right, so as you're going around the room and you're brainstorming with people and you're saying, okay, what happens next? What happens next? You do need to be on the lookout for a time where somebody's going to say, okay, now at this step, we do this. It's naturally going to happen. And at that point, it is crucial that you take a moment to step back and say, okay, well, while we're doing that, what's our customer doing in that moment? Very small change in your mindset, but to me, it really just makes all the difference in the world because now you're starting to see it through their lens. And a lot of times the answer to that question is they're waiting. Our customer waits while we research an answer, while we get a form, while we get something back to them. Again, very small change, but now you're really starting to see it through their lens. And I really do believe that it all comes down to the processes that you're putting people through. All right, so again, the first step is let's identify that process we want to get better at. Next, let's gather a group of the right team members that are involved in that process. And then let's map it out step by step. And then the third step, and this is where the magic of this tool is really going to come into play now, is for each step we just listed out there, you ask yourself two very important questions. What would mediocre service look like or sound like at each step? And then what would excellent service look like or sound like at each step? And here's the reason I recommend you do it exactly this way. As you're going around the room, you're brainstorming, you're asking people, what would mediocre look like? I could promise you, just like what happens to everybody else that we do this with, somewhere along the way at one of those steps, somebody is going to say, what we just described as mediocre at that step, well, that kind of sounds a lot like what we currently do, which sounds a little negative. Yeah, I get that, but it really is not. And here's the important thing to remember. I'm not talking about poor service. When we give somebody poor service, we know it, don't we? We know when we've really screwed something up with one of our customers. Mediocre, that becomes more a sin of omission. Don't even really recognize that we're doing it. It wasn't bad, but we just sort of processed somebody through one of the steps there. So now for you, if you're doing this on your own or you're doing this as part of a group, it provides you this wonderful opportunity to say, well, okay, if that's what we're doing at that step right now, and we're saying that it's mediocre, well, then what would excellent service look like at that step? And that's where the ideas will really start to come out. And keep in mind here now, I am not naive. I recognize that you are not going to be able to implement every single idea that comes out. But for some of these, you're going to be saying to yourself, why didn't we ever think of this before? And to give you an example, back in the early 1990s, Disney World, they wanted to raise the bar of service. They wanted to get better at what they were doing. And this is when Disney was already the best game in town, which to me is always the best time to say, okay, what can we do right now to continue getting better, have that continuous improvement? And they looked at hundreds of areas of opportunity. And one that they saw was, at the end of the day, getting the guests from the park back to their hotel at the end of the evening. All right, because if you have been out there before, you know that the end of the day at Disney World, now that is not a happy time. All right, you are out there all day long. It's so hot, it's so crowded. You're broke now. And, once those fireworks go off, I mean, the magic is done, right? It's just this mass exodus of humanity rushing out of the park. And so they saw this as an area of opportunity. So they gathered a group of their cast members together and they talked about this and they brainstormed. And what would mediocre service look like? What would excellent service look like? And some of the ideas they came up with now, like some of the bus drivers, they will hold Disney trivia contests on the bus rides back, or they'll get the kids singing along to the different Disney songs, or singing happy birthday to somebody celebrating a birthday. Now, the housekeepers in the hotels, they will, arrange the stuffed Disney characters. They'll tuck them into the beds, or they'll place them around the room in fun positions, or do the little animals made out of the towels that you have probably seen. All those things took a few extra seconds of time. There was no added cost, but it was about taking a step back and looking at something that they'd been doing out there since 1971 and turning that lens around and bringing it back to the experience. And so this tool right here is just a fantastic one when looking at the experience mapping, to really look at what are ways that, even when this can get challenging and difficult, that we can bring it back to being about the experience. So I do hope that you find that one to be helpful. The second principle that I want to talk about here today, if we are going to really deliver this loyalty driving experience to whoever it is we're serving is this idea right here, is to pay attention to the details. Because, and now this is the phrase that I hope you always remember, everything speaks. Right? Everything speaks, from the tone of voice on your phone, the appearance on the camera if you're meeting virtually, the paperwork, if there's any mess around the office, every single detail, big or small, is communicating something to your customers about the brand, whether you want it to or not. And so the question you need to ask yourself about every single detail is it enhancing or detracting from the brand? All right, for example, now this is a picture that I took outside of a hospital that they obviously put efforts into their landscaping, right? It looks very nice. But I know right now, every single one of you, you're looking at that Pepsi can. And now at Disney World, we had a term for everything, all right? And we would call that Pepsi can a visual intrusion, all right, which it is. Because when I think about a hospital, I think about clean, and I think about attention to detail. And it doesn't take too many things like that Pepsi can to start adding up before, at least subconsciously, I start to question the quality of everything else. So as you think about these in terms of your world, what are the Pepsi cans? And what are those things that if taken one at a time seem small? A little piece of trash here, taking slightly too long to get back to somebody, a little stain on a shirt, one at a time maybe doesn't make such a big impact. But when you start to stack some of these things on top of each other, now you do start to take away from this experience that you're trying to deliver to your customers. This next one I want to share with you, it's a picture my father actually sent to me a number of years ago. He was out on the road traveling. He was getting ready to board one of these small little commuter airplanes. He was out in Texas somewhere, and it was one of these really small planes. And as he was waiting to board, he happened to notice something on the wing of the plane. And he got a picture there, and he did get a close-up now. So there was duct tape on the wing. All right. Now, everything speaks here. Okay, I want you to think about this. What would that say to you as the passenger? All right, OMG, yeah. It would probably get me far away from this plane. All right, and now my dad's a great guy. Love him, very smart. But I do gotta say, it does say a lot about his intelligence here that he did in fact get on the plane that day. And like most of you, I'm a pretty big believer in duct tape. All right, but I gotta say, this would be pushing me just a little too far outside of my duct tape comfort zone. All right, and this was one of those planes that was so small where the pilot was the flight attendant. The pilot will open up the door and they'll give the spiel. So as he's board the plane to the pilot, he says, you got some duct tape on the wing there, right? And the pilot said, oh no, that's high-speed aviation tape. Everything speaks. All right, that's duct tape. I don't care what the technical term is. And that's not building my confidence. It is not building my trust. And in our world today, that trust is absolutely crucial. So again, I would ask you then, in your world, what is the duct tape? All right, what are those things that can whittle away at the trust and take away from the brand? Getting different forms wrong, putting in the wrong numbers there. Or it could be something as simple as getting different answers from different people across the organization, across the process, or any of the vendors there about the same issue. It's a different application of it, sure, but it's duct tape as far as your customers are concerned. This next picture I'm gonna share with you, it's I was checking into a hotel one time. I was walking down the hallway down to my room, and I came across a sign which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah, you might not, but I thought this one was funny. Now, to this day, I still have no clue whose convenience they were really talking about here. But I am fairly certain it was not mine. All right, and in that same hotel, up on the mirror in the bathroom, there was this little handwritten note. It said, towels are inventoried every day. You will be charged for any missing towels. Now, everything speaks. All right, what's that sign really saying to me? saying, don't steal his towels, right? You are probably a thief. And I will admit to you that these were some very nice towels. All right. I still have them. But I don't think that's the message that they intended. But as you and I both know, what we intend now, that makes no difference. It's what the customer perceives. So even the signage we use, the wording we use, it all matters. It all plays a part. Now, this last one, we were doing some work with a retail organization. We were visiting one of their locations. We came across this scene here. This is an old picture. I know the picture doesn't do it justice here, but this was a nice merchandise. It was a nice store. But I know everybody's looking at that broom there. And so somebody left the door to the stock room open. And now here's the thing. Backstage just came on stage. All right. And obviously, every organization has a backstage that it needs to operate. But the problem becomes when that backstage impacts the onstage customer experience. All right, so here you go through all this stuff. You've got this nice store, you've got this nice merchandise. Somebody props that stockroom door open, and then the brand suffers. So as I mentioned, we were doing some work with them. So we brought this up to the manager, and he said, well, you know, when our employees go back to get stock, they prop the door open, they get what they need, they come back out, and then they close the door. It's only open for a couple seconds. But that probably happens like 40 or 50 times a day, just in that one location. Now, I hope you would agree with me. That is an awful lot of backstage coming on stage. And then again, in your world, so I know a lot of you now are working remotely, working virtually there. So what are the backstage elements? Like what's behind you on the WebEx meetings that you're doing if you're meeting with your clients there? You know, are there kids, their pets going crazy in the background? Well, what are those things? If you are in the branches there in the banks, are there elements there that are distracting and shouldn't be seen by the customers? And that also applies to conversations. You know, are there conversations that you should not have while the customers are around? Because there's also what we call attitudinal everything speaks. And I am sure you have all been in one of those situations where you're out at a company somewhere and there are a couple of employees who they are just a bit more concerned in talking amongst themselves than they are in serving you, or they're busy finishing up a phone call or a text message before they acknowledge your existence. Or maybe you happen to overhear them saying something negative about another customer, about an employee, or maybe about the organization. I apologize, getting ahead of myself here. It's not letting me click. And the way I will see this play out most often is when we blame another person or department for something that went wrong. All right, when we throw one part of our company under the bus, we're throwing the whole company under the bus. And I've got a few behind the scenes secrets that I want to share with you all here today. And these are things that you have to promise me that you are never going to tell anybody. All right, because Disney's lawyers now, they don't mess around. So I'm preparing you right now. Just get ready. I have heard Disney cast members swear. All right, I have heard Disney cast members complain about the guests. I did it all the time. I have seen Cinderella smoking a cigarette. All right, which I got to tell you is all kinds of weird. All right, because there she is in all her glory. She's got the wig on, she's got the dress, she's just puffing away, you know, big cloud of smoke following her around everywhere. But where would you see something like that at a Disney World? Backstage, right? Behind the scenes. Because just imagine, you had saved up for years. You took out a second mortgage on your house so you could take the family out to Disney World. All right, you're out front, you're paying your money to get in, everybody's excited. And you finally make it inside the park. And you are walking down Main Street, USA, there at the Magic Kingdom. And then there in front of the castle of Cinderella. And your child, your precious little child goes running up to Cinderella, tugs on her dress. Cinderella turns around, she's got a cigarette in one hand, cup of coffee in the other. Says, kid, I'm on break. What would be the impact on your child? They probably need therapy. But now here's my business question for you. Does it matter then in that moment how many billions of dollars they spent building Disney World? It's not worth anything. All right, and I'm going to ask you a strange question here. I recognize this is a strange question, and I'm not even looking for an answer. I really just want you to be thinking about it. But in your world, which again, now you know a whole lot better than I do, what are those potential smoking Cinderella behaviors? All right, what are those things that can so often creep into our performance, but if the customer were to ever witness it, would just destroy the experience? All right, and I'm not talking about Cinderella here anymore. I'm not talking about smoking. All right, I'm talking about the things that they are the realities of the world that we live in. But if the customer were ever to see it, would really just take away from the brand. And as we know, a brand is a very fragile thing. And so one of the things I recommend organizations do is come together and have a dialogue on what are our everything speaks distractors, both physical and attitudinal. And then one for one, now, if those are distractors, then what do our everything speaks commitments need to be? What is it that we need to commit to as an organization to make sure those distractors do not creep into the performance? And I actually believe in taking it a step further and calling them everything speaks non-negotiables. I believe world-class organizations have non-negotiables. And my recommendation to you is to come up with your top 10. Those top 10 everything speaks non-negotiables. You might end up with more than that, but I want you to focus in on those top 10, those things that after a while, they just become part of the culture, just part of the way we do things. And to give you an example here of an everything speaks distractor, our Disney World is this big, beautiful place, right? We've got this magic kingdom, we've got this castle, all these different themed lands. It's beautiful. Now, wouldn't an everything speaks distractor be if there was trash everywhere? All right, but folks, I want you to really think about the reality of that business. It generates a tremendous amount of trash. And so, because that is a reality, one of the Everything Speaks commitments is, as a cast member, you're walking through the park, you see a piece of trash on the ground. It is your job to go over, pick it up, and throw it away. All right, that's non-negotiable. And it does not matter if you are a frontline employee or you are the vice president of marketing. You go over, you pick it up, and you throw it away. And interestingly enough, when I asked earlier, what impressed you about Disney World? Now, what was the number one response that came through? How clean it is. Because it is everybody's job. And then the beauty of it, the reason I say to really focus in on those top 10 is after a while, if you're really staying on top of your folks, you're holding people accountable. The behaviors associated with those things, they just become part of who you are. You don't even need to think about it anymore. And that's really the beauty, is you want these behaviors to just become part of your natural behavior. Because if everything does speak, then let's make sure those details, they are saying exactly what we want them to say. And then finally here, the third principle. If we are going to move from this whole task mentality to one about delivering an experience, is to create moments of wow for the people that we're serving. And I chose this phrasing here, moments of wow, very carefully. Because I think so often people who do what we do, that talk about customer service, that really so often we end up doing you a disservice. And it's because of the examples that we love to use. I know you've probably been in those meetings before where the consultant's telling you got to wow your customers, got to wow your customers. And they tell these unbelievable stories of the big wows, which are great when you can do them. Now, if an opportunity ever presents itself that you could do a big wow for a customer, obviously I think that you should. But I truly believe that the magic is in the little wows, creating those moments of wow. Because, and here's the thing, those little wows add up. All right, over time, the little wows add up. Doesn't have to be big things. Simply remembering somebody's name, a friendly smile when you're meeting with them virtually or in person, a follow-up after the closing. None of those are big things and don't take a lot of effort. But in the back of your customer's mind, even if it's only for just a moment, they're thinking, wow. Especially when it comes to being remembered. I mean, ultimately, who doesn't want to be remembered? And then from there, the obvious question is, okay, how can we build the little wows into our culture here? And there's one more tool I want to share with you. And this one comes out of a tremendous amount of research done by the Gallup organization on what customers expect from any organization they're doing business with. And what Gallup found in their research, and this applies across industries, is that customers literally have a hierarchy of expectations. All right, fundamentally, foundationally, customers expect accuracy. All right, I expect that you are going to get it right. The terms are going to be correct, the dates are going to be correct, I'm going to have the right forms, you are going to be on top of it. All right, if that's not correct, it does not matter how good you are at the rest of this. Nothing else matters. All right. Once that is in place, which it must be, the next level up is availability. All right, so when I need you, how accessible are you? Are you responsive to my calls, to my emails? If you are going to be out of town when it comes time to actually have the closing, has that been communicated ahead of time? Is there somebody ready to take over? Once that's in place, which again it must be, the next level up is partnership. So do I feel that, by the way, that this entire transaction has played out, that you've actually cared about my experience? Have we worked hand in hand? Has it been a sense of collaboration? Or do I feel that I'm just being processed through and it's just a very transactional nature? And then finally, and they have proven this, the highest level of service that you can provide is advice. All right, when you teach me something I did not know before, or I am now better because of the interaction that we just had, that's as good as it gets. All right, when you teach people something new, and in your world you have that opportunity to do that all the time, especially for those that are doing this for the first time, and even those that have done it a number of times, finding ways to save them time or save them money. When you can do that, you are going to lock in loyalty. And it is important to recognize here that this is a hierarchy. Each level will earn you the right to the next level. And as a matter of fact, you could really just draw a line through the middle of that pyramid there, just cut it in half. So Gallup would call those two things at the bottom there dissatisfiers. All right, so if I'm your borrower and you are not accurate and you are not available, now I'm actively dissatisfied with the bank. All right, so you will lose points for not doing well at those things. But the frustrating part is you're not going to get points for doing well at those things, right? Because those are just the expectations. That's just the cost of doing business. So I'm not going to give you points for doing well at those things, but you will lose points for not doing well at them. So then what about those two above the line, partnership and advice? Now, those are your wow opportunities. Those are the areas you have to separate yourself from all the competition that you have out there. And the one little caveat I will add to it here is that it likely will not be appropriate in every single interaction that you teach us something new. All right, when you can, you should, because that, as we said, that's as good as it gets. But it likely won't be appropriate in every interaction. But I do hope that you would all agree with me that we should always strive to get above that line there. All right, our customers should always feel that sense of partnership. And I had a chance to review some customer comments from over the years, both positive and negative. And the one theme that I saw run consistently throughout both was communication. Either they were on top of the communication, we knew exactly what we needed to do, what was expected, dates, everything was communicated ahead of time. Fantastic experience. But on the flip side, on the negative, it was the same thing. Wish there was more communication, needed more communication. That there, and then the knowledge. The other one was they were very knowledgeable about what we were doing, walked us through step by step, was a fantastic experience. So if you're looking at it, the communication aspect and the knowledge, if you can do those, you are going to set yourself apart from all the competition that you have out there. And to me, that's really what it comes down to now. If you are the organization that really focuses on creating an experience instead of just completing the tasks, I think it really just comes down to these three things right here. You are seeing the experience through the lens of the customer and designing your processes with their lens in mind. You are paying attention to the details because you know that every little thing speaks and can make or break a deal. And you are creating those moments of wow. If you can do that, going back to what we talked about earlier today, the outcome is going to be the loyalty. And when I really think about intense customer loyalty, most people think that because of my background that my mind would go to Disney World. All right, but it does not. When I think about really intense customer loyalty, now my mind goes to this organization right here. All right, Harley Davidson. I don't know if any of you out there are a Harley rider, but Harley riders, now they are very special people. All right, because I want you to imagine having a customer, having a company where your customers, they are so loyal that they are willing to carve your company's name into their skin. Just imagine going up to any one of your customers after the closing and saying, roll up your sleeve. And there it is. All right. So that is the kind of loyalty that you should be striving for. All right. And I will admit it is highly unlikely you are going to get to the tattoo. But I will guarantee you this. If you do look through the lens of your customers, if you do pay attention to the details, and if you do create those moments of wow, you're probably not going to get to the tattoo, but you will get to the loyalty. And I got to tell you, that is worth every moment of effort that we can put into it. Oh, Lee and Galen, I want to thank you all again for having me. I hope that you all found this to be helpful. I'll turn it back over to Lee here because I think we're going to do a little bit of Q&A.
Yeah, hey, Danny, thank you. And while we let Galen gather some questions, first of all, terrific advice, Danny. I think we can all learn a lot from the principles, the tools that you shared with us. Particularly like the example of challenging the status quo. Disney was already known as being the best experience, but they wanted to get better. And at the end of the day, they said, how can we make it better? So you're not just sort of resting on your laurels, you're challenging that status quo and always looking for continuous improvement. I guess just a couple of questions to get the ball rolling. Yeah. Obviously, this has been a journey for Disney over a number of years. So first of all, how did you know when you were on this continuous improvement journey that you were heading in the right direction in terms of measuring success and being able factually to prove that you were heading in the right direction? And then just given the number of employees, getting everybody on the same page must have taken a lot of training and just working together collaboratively. So again, everybody's saying the same thing.
Right. Really just asking, guest feedback, doing all that, they are on top of it, of asking people inside the parks, at the hotels, relentless on the emails, and really they look to see, okay, what are the things that are being commented on the most, and everything is, and it comes down to that cleanliness too, but all the little details, again, just get them back on the bus there, the little things the housekeepers would do. Those always show up time and time again when they're asked what's good about Disney. And, there's the things that they still need to work on too, and they'll adjust over the years. But it really does, it comes down to getting everybody on the same page. And so training out of Disney, everybody has to go through the Disney Traditions program. They learn the history, they learn exactly what is expected. And then there's the ongoing training throughout the time. Just because that portion of the training is done, it doesn't mean that your training at Disney is done. That is an ongoing time through the lifetime of working out there. And they will pull you aside and coach you. If you are ever seen walking by a piece of trash, not doing something that you are supposed to be doing, you're going to hear about it. You're going to be coached on it. And they are going to make sure that everybody knows what is expected and why that is expected of them.
Yeah, that's great. Let me open it up to the Galen or the rest of this room if anyone's got other questions.
We have a question in the chat from William. He'd like to know how best to deal with negatives and change to a positive.
That's where you gather those groups. Now that everybody that's working frontline, you hear the complaints all the time. They know your call centers, the people that are dealing with customers on a daily basis, they hear the frustrations and they're dealing with the brunt of it. So they oftentimes know where those processes are that can be improved and how to improve them. So that's when it comes down to sitting down in these brainstorming sessions and going around the room and asking, okay, what are some ideas you have for this? When it came to getting the housekeepers to do the things they were doing, There was one housekeeper. Her name was Helen. She was in one of these meetings with the leadership, and they're asking people, "What are some things you've been doing? What are some things you've heard about?" And she got up and she said, I've been tucking into Disney characters, and I leave a little handwritten note. I say the characters were tired, so I tucked them in for you. Signed her name and left it on the bed. And that just took off. It got everybody. Management was talking about it. All the other housekeepers were talking about it. And it became like kind of almost a competition across the company to see some of the different things that they can do. And so this came from somebody that doesn't get paid a lot of money, isn't considered high up on the pole there, but there started an idea that generated across the industry. I mean, you see that at all the hotels now, on the cruise ships, all from that one little idea from somebody that has a very hard job already, but knew that what she was doing made a difference.
Okay, Danny, the next question is, how large is Disney's training team relative to the rest of their employee count? And then, were there specific strategies used to convey information?
So I don't have an answer on the count there. I am not sure how much is in the training team there. And I haven't worked there in going on 20 years, so it's probably changed significantly too from the time I was there. And what was the second part? How do they convey the information? Was it?
Yes, were there specific strategies used to convey information?
Yeah, so they would highlight it there, and then a lot of times, I mean, while cast members are out there in the park, I mean, we don't have all the answers to everything. We don't necessarily know the time that was there going on. So there was a phone number that was instituted that you could call with any question that you needed an answer to, and they would be able to give that to you. And now with the app, there's probably a lot more that the cast members have access to back when we did. But that was, they figured out, okay, what are potential frustrations, areas of opportunity, and how can we put this information into our employees' hands so that they are available to assist our guests when they need that help. So it was finding out whatever they could do to make sure that the cast members had it. Does that help?
It looks like there's no response, so I'm sure that was a great answer. Of course, yes.
All right, cool.
I don't see any other questions in the chat. Did anyone else have any questions in the room?
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Oila.
I have a question. So as part of the training, I mean, you gave a couple circumstances where somebody maybe without the training might have just rolled their eyes at the customer, like what time does the 3 p.m. parade start? It seems like a strange question. What was the training to kind of take the response of that cast member beyond that question so that they could neutralize their own reaction and want to seek what the real question was?
It would really highlight the idea that out at Disney World, and it doesn't matter how many times you have been there before, it is a sensory overload. There is a lot going on out there. And people would oftentimes, they kind of lose themselves in this. It's this magical fantasy world that, people think that, we can control the rain. They think that Disney World was built inside a dome like the Truman Show. People seem to lose all sense of reality out there. And so they figured that you were going to start getting some of these silly questions, and we've got to be, humane enough in our responses to deal with people to make sure that they're not feeling stupid. You don't want to make people feel marginalized while they're out there. You want them enjoying this magical vacation that they saved up for a long time to go out to do. Sometimes this has been years and years and years. They're dropping $5,000 to $10,000 for 4 or 5 days out there at Disney World. They don't want to be insulted. They want to maximize their time that's out there, and they want to know what to expect. So you wanted to have that empathy and make sure that the cast members don't always get it right. There are plenty of issues where the cast member has screwed up in some of those situations, but the overwhelming majority of them are out there willing to help and looking for areas of opportunity to assist them and make that magic keep happening for those guests that are out there.
Good question. So, Danny, you talked about the cleanliness, and I know in all the times I've been there, one of the things that always strikes me is just the number of maintenance workers out on stage that are there just cleaning everywhere. And my question was, does Disney have, when they look at their evaluation of expenses and things, different ways they look at what they, how they value the expense to maybe staff at that level to keep the park clean versus, just, hey, this is an expense, for people out there. How do they go about reconciling like how they do funding and things for these initiatives that go to customer experience compared to what maybe, you would traditionally think?
Can't necessarily speak to how they do all their funding and everything for it, but it has been, studied over and over again on the importance of that. That was Walt's whole vision, was they don't want to have a dirty theme park, and that's what you would always see when you would go before Disney came around. It was ugly. People threw trash on the ground. So he would sit there and he would study. He'd say, okay, how many steps does somebody take before they're going to just throw their piece of trash on the ground before they finally just are done holding it? So there was a lot of efforts into having the trash cans around, making sure that all the cast members, that not just the custodial staff, are involved in picking it up. So I'm not really, I can't really speak to the behind the scenes because I was not involved in that at all. So I'm not sure on that part. But obviously, the number one response whenever we ask what impressed you about Disney is cleanliness. And that's what they want to make sure of. So there is a very strong focus on it, but I apologize, I can't answer your question fully there.
Do you have any other questions, Galen?
Nope, that's it. We just have a lot of great comments in the chat. This video is recorded, and so that anybody that wants to come back to it and read through those or revisit some of the presentation, we'll be sending something out either late today or tomorrow.
Well, thank you.
I did have one. I'm sorry. Do you want one more, or are you ready to wrap up? One just popped in.
No. If we got one more, let's ask it.
How did Disney help transition workforce to follow customer experience mentality? Besides training for those new workers that don't think this way, was there incentives, positive, negative consequences for not following customer experience?
Yeah. As I said, it was ongoing training and the coaching. And after a couple different times, there's the written reprimands, verbal reprimands, eventually getting to termination. All of these things are part of the job description. So people are being hired. This is the expectation. This is what you do when you work here. So if it's not followed, you will be seeking new employment here after a number of those reprimands that happen. So yeah, that is ongoing. There is a point where Disney will say, all right, you're done. That happened to my little brother, David. So it does happen.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much, Danny. I think we can all benefit from some of the wisdom you've shared with us, and we really do appreciate you spending time with us today. So thank you.
Thank you again for having me. This was wonderful. And I look forward to hearing from you down the road if there's ever anything else I can do for you.
Absolutely.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks,
you.
Kayleen.
Thank you.